Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Thank you so much for being here. This show is created to discuss life topics, to grow, to challenge, and transform your thinking. And as you know, I always have amazing human beings that I bring on here to help us challenge and transform the way we think. And today I have Coach John here, and he is a weight loss coach and an emotional eating expert. And he's lost over 100 pounds, from nanotechnology researcher to Navy Marine engineer to a globetrotting nomad. I mean, this guy's done it all, right? So John has spent most of his life running from his true calling until one question changed his life. And I want to know what that is. And now he's on a mission to help others lose weight for good and leave the BS diets in the rearview mirror. And I agree with that. I'm someone, John, who's been, struggling with weight loss for a long time. And I'm in my late 40s, and I finally decided that this has to end, right? But you're right. The BS diets, there's so many. And there's always a guru in every corner with a new diet. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, and I love what you're doing here, because I think
Thank you.
we do a disservice to people. I think compassion gets misunderstood, and we do a disservice to people when we're afraid to tell people the truth of their situation. I think it can be done with compassion, and that's how we actually create change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think, to me, I'm a straight shooter, right? But to me, like honesty and being straight up, it's just the way I am. And some people like that and some people don't, and that's okay. But I also
Yeah.
feel like I do it with a lot of love and compassion, because if I don't tell the truth, that isn't love or compassion.
That's right. And I like to say that we can receive a hard message when we know the heart of the messenger. And when we know it's coming from a good place, where it's because imagine like saying, hey, we're going to go on a road trip. And you go, cool, where are we starting? And you go, I don't know. Well, how can you get anywhere if you can't acknowledge your starting point? And
Right.
so when it comes to trying to acknowledge, and I've had I've had my pretty difficult come to the truth moments, where it's like you have to acknowledge exactly where you're at right now and sit with the discomfort of that. And that really is a reflection on how we feel about ourselves and how we're projecting it onto other people, which probably we'll get into a couple of things
Yes.
as we talk.
Yes. Yes. And I do want to know a little bit more about you, John. So if we can just dig into a little bit of who you are, and then we'll go from there, because there's a lot to uncover. So let's do it.
Absolutely.
What is who is John? Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what have you gone through that journey? Because you said, like I introduced in the bio, that you've lost 100 pounds, but something started
Yeah.
somewhere, right? So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah, because I've had kind of this pretty crazy journey. I'm almost 40 years old, and I figure I've lived close to two lifetimes. So, yeah, I studied chemistry and marketing psychology at University of Victoria originally. So I was already interested in kind of how the brain worked. But then I got bored of the university, so I joined the Navy. But the military is great, except for the politics and the fact that they own your life. And so my wife
Yeah.
and I decided that,
Just that, huh?
yeah, yeah. There's a few other, yeah. There's some upsides and there's some downsides, but I came home one day and said to my wife, because I also say the military breeds divorced alcoholics, and I didn't want to be either of those. So I
Right.
came home to my wife one day and said, let's teach English, and so we talk about wanting to travel the world. So why don't we
Okay.
stop talking about it and actually start doing it? And
Nice.
that's exactly what we did. So we packed up our lives, hopped on a plane to Puerto Vallarta, and moved inland to Guadalajara in Mexico, and just started teaching down there. And it's interesting, because we kind of looked at each other on the flight down and go, like, are we nuts? What are we doing here? We had enough money saved up. We could have bought a house, and instead we decided to do this. And in hindsight, I'm so glad we did. But
Yeah.
it was on these global travels. So we ended up going to about 45 countries on 5 continents over a kind of a 3-year span.
Wow.
But it was when we were living down in South Africa that I went through trauma, and so I was nearly beaten to death down there by 4 men, and it had to do with my
Wow.
skin color. Obviously didn't know me, so it didn't have anything to do with me personally.
Right.
But just that I say that I was a representation of something they felt had historically oppressed them, and because of that, I was a victim. And in their culture, it's interesting to talk about trauma, and in one sense, we could say this is like a cultural trauma response. So they didn't just say want to shoot me or something like that. They wanted to punish me and beat me to death for my skin
Wow.
color because of their history. and so that for me, interestingly, I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about it blithely. Believe me, this was a very hard experience to go through.
Yeah. No,
But
I can feel that.
I've done a lot of the work that's allowed me to move past it, and I think that's why I can talk about it like this today. It was a horrifying, terrifying, very very difficult experience, but it was being able to understand what got them to the place where they thought this was an appropriate and a desirable course of action. That's what actually started me being able to go down this path of even forgiving them for what they did.
Right.
Because ultimately, if I wanted to be free from that, that's one of the steps to breaking free. But when that experience happened, I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And I don't think anybody does have the tools to deal with trauma.
Yeah.
Let's just, but I turned to food rather than drugs or alcohol. I had enough sort of sense about me that I was like, I'm not gonna turn to drugs or alcohol, but food. And it wasn't even necessarily a conscious decision. It just became a coping mechanism, and it's cheap and it's easy.
It's everywhere, and you need it.
It's everywhere, and we're faced with it every day.
Right.
And so, it's surprising how rapidly weight gain can happen. But I do say that we have a famine biology in a feast world. And so we're hardwired to store fat very efficiently and very quickly in times of food abundance or calorie abundance. And so we'll store fat really, really easily, but our body will hold on to it and part with it very slowly. That's a famine response, and that's why human beings are still alive. So something that's very frustrating for us in the 21st century is also something that's been really, really powerful and helped human beings to survive centuries of food insecurity. So, but that's just a bit of a side note. So I went through this trauma, and I used food to cope, and that's what caused me to gain over 100 pounds.
Wow. Was that something that, when you were going through this, and I'm sorry about your trauma too, because that is very traumatic, right? To have violence on you, just violence. It does something to you too, psychologically, if you allow it. Like it'll help you, or it'll deter you from meeting new people, from going places. It can really start to cause a lot of damage. So really super proud of you that you also did the work with the forgiveness part. I teach a lot on forgiveness because it's super important for your freedom, for your mind, for your growth. But I am sorry you went through that. But I'm sorry. I'm also very, I'm glad that you did not let that experience be your experience with everyone. Was that something that was difficult for you to like pull yourself apart, or were you automatically not blaming everyone, or what happened there?
No, it's really interesting, and I actually say I'm grateful for this experience. And it might sound funny for people to hear that, but it caused this huge shift, obviously, in my entire perspective on life. There's a certain naivety that's taken away when you're confronted with the reality of the human condition, that there are people out there that will do terrible things to other people. And there's a big difference between hearing about it on the news and going, oh, that's too bad, and actually living through trauma. And it gave me a lot more compassion for people who have gone through trauma, because now I understood the sort of the psychological component, the PTSD that goes a lot further than just say, a lot of people just wanted to say, hey, you're lucky you survived, and that's a total, but they don't understand any differently.
Right.
It's like, well, there's a lot of damage that comes along with that. And so there was a lot of rage. So I have a really strong sense of justice and fairness, and for people jumping me at night when I'm unarmed and basically, helpless, it felt very, very unjust and unfair. But there's always a part of me that, what do I want to say, part of my brain that goes, this isn't who you are. And so that in itself became a struggle, because I had these intrusive thoughts coming into my head of wanting to inflict violence, of being extremely angry. But a part of me goes, this is not who you are. And I go, well, why do these thoughts keep coming into my head,
Right.
And feeling guilty about that. And so that just takes time to resolve. And forgiveness was definitely a piece of the puzzle. And you hit the nail on the head. It really became about freedom. I didn't want to be angry every time I thought about this experience or relived it. In trauma, we relive the experience, so, or I did anyways, saying, if I knew this, I would have done that. If I knew this, I would have done, trying to rewrite the narrative in my head. And it's a narrative that can't be rewritten, because what happened is what happened. And even just making peace with that fact. This is what happened. This is the reality. No amount of rethinking it is going to change it.
Right.
And I want to give a shout out to trauma counselors as well. There's something really, really incredible about being able to, let's say, open a box in someone's brain, unpack a little bit of that box, and then close it up and put it away and say, even though it's not all resolved, we made a little bit of progress today and we'll revisit this again. There's a real skill in doing
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
there's no, not only is there no shame in seeking help, it's incredibly important that you
Yeah.
do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. And it's funny because I was just talking yesterday actually to a trauma counselor.
Yeah.
And we were talking about just that it is okay to seek for that help. And I think, with this last year and a half of this pandemic that we're all been going through, mental health has definitely become now in the forefront, right? As you
It has.
probably know. I mean, it's there. People are talking about it, which is good because when I was growing up, it was one of those things like you don't talk about it, we don't discuss it, it's our business, we don't, and meanwhile people are suffering in silence,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And that in itself is a shame. And it's funny that I say it's a shame because the fact that we suffer in silence is connected to shame. This
Mm-hmm.
idea that somehow we're supposed to be perfect and flawless and don't let anybody see that you have weakness and vulnerability and so on. And we could say there's a bit of a biological root there, especially maybe in masculine culture, because historically speaking, men are providers and protectors. That's what we do. It's what we're kind of wired to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so showing vulnerability could potentially make be a sign of weakness that makes you at higher risk for being attacked as a protector. But in that same token, we live in the 21st century where we're not living with that same degree of threat, and we actually have the opportunity to be vulnerable. And social media, for all we say that we understand it's a highlight reel, it doesn't change the fact that I think it's really damaged our perception of reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we consume really matters,
Yep.
and we can say I can handle it, but the reality is it's conditioning us at a subconscious level if we don't regulate our consumption of that, because digital media is not really the truth.
Right.
It's shaped
Mm-hmm.
by someone's opinion and bias and narrative, and it's
Mm-hmm.
shaped by algorithms that are geared to trigger you in a certain way. And it's kind of like when you understand what you're dealing with in this world, maybe you are able to handle a little bit better, but like my way of handling it is to have a newsfeed blocker, basically. So
Good for you. Yeah.
yeah, just recognizing that there's a lot of things out there that I can pause it for 5 or 10 minutes if I choose to scroll, but that's exactly what I do. And
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, I keep these apps off my phone.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Really, really good. That's good advice. I have my apps on the phone, but what I did is I put a timer on them.
Oh
So
yeah,
once it reaches a certain timer, it says you've already had your time for the day. And then I leave it be because I'm on social media so much. And because my
yeah,
show is, taking off and I'm on all these platforms, I'm like, you can get really caught up, like you said, John, and not only just in what you're consuming, but your comparison to other people. Am I doing
yeah,
as much as they are? Do I have as much as they do? Am I a good enough coach as that person is? You really start to question even yourself, like who you are
yeah,
and your capabilities, right? And I think
yeah.
that's a huge flag for us too, to be careful about what we're consuming. You're right. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so I'll just take it back to something here. So I was able to kind of work through and forgive the people that inflicted the trauma on me. But one of the things that happened is, so I used to be an athlete, and I really struggled with the loss of that identity.
Mm,
It's hard to go from being someone who was athletic to someone who was morbidly obese.
right.
And there was this real disconnect. And that led to me really kind of turning my shame and guilt and frustration, anger towards myself. And it turned me to, like, I say I waded into this murky world of weight loss and diet culture, a world I never
Mm-hmm,
really had to be a
mm-hmm.
part of before. And there, it was like all this information's out there on the internet. We live in the age of Google. And how can and I'm pretty educated too. And it's like, how can I know all this stuff and somehow not figure it out myself? And
Right.
that led me to being very sort of frustrated and angry with myself, even to the point where I would like spite eat. I'd be like, fine. I was so mad at my body that I would just like
I
eat to
so
pun.
get that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like damn it, body. If you're not going to do what I want it to, fine. I'll show you. I'm going to eat this
Right.
entire pizza. Um, it was
Right. Punishing yourself. Right. Got
yeah,
it.
cutting off
Self-sabotage. Yeah.
cutting off your
Yeah.
nose to spite your face. And I share that because again, people will hear this. You lost 100 pounds, and the first thing I want to do is like ask is what did you do and how long did it take? And those are natural questions, but the truth is everyone's journey is going to look individual. And what I did is or isn't necessarily going to be something that'll work for you. And I say, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, it wouldn't have taken 6 years.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. Not necessarily how you lost it, which we can get into, but
Hmm.
I wanted to know the realization you came to
Yeah.
start the journey, right? Because that's the hard part, is that first freaking day, right?
Yeah.
And then the eighth or ninth day when you fell off the wagon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then getting back on the wagon, like that's the hard part for me to being that I am someone who struggles with weight and weight
Hmm.
loss, is I know that there are moments where you got this and there are
Yep.
moments where you don't, right? And there are
Yeah.
moments when you fall off that wagon and the freaking wagon seems impossible to catch up to and get back on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I like to say there actually is no wagon,
Right.
and
Good
there's only
point.
life. So I know why we use the expression, but the mythical wagon is this idea we have in our heads that somehow there is out there an existence where every day goes according to plan. And the truth is, that never exists. So it's a
Mm-hmm,
myth.
mm-hmm.
So we don't fall off the wagon. We're just busy navigating curveballs.
Right.
Life is out there trying to punch us in the gut and kick us in the junk. And uh, it's not that
And it
life's all
does
misery.
sometimes. It
Oh,
does.
yeah, it does a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so if we even letting go, because I had this idea for a long time too, and it was a very special coach who said to me, "There is no wagon," and that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Um,
That just stuck with me. So I get it.
yeah, so it's there isn't a wagon, there's just life,
Yeah.
and you asked about what's the question that changed my life, and it was finally after all these years of struggle, I hired a coach that I really connected well with, and he showed me compassion because I didn't really know what compassion or self-compassion was.
Mm,
And because again, in masculine culture, it's not really talked about a lot.
right.
And don't make no mistake, I love being a man. I love masculine energy. But compassion doesn't weaken us. So
Right.
he asked me this question. He said, "John, if you make a list of all the things you love and value, how far down that list do I have to go before I find your name?"
Mm, mm, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
I use that
Wow.
question a lot when I'm working with my clients. That one really hit me, right? Because the first realization was, oh my gosh, I'm not on the list. Like, it's not even that I'm near the bottom. It's like I am not on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So he opened my eyes to the possibility that I'm actually allowed to love and value myself instead of just be angry and trying to, I got into like powerlifting and listening to heavy metal and like double scooping pre-workout and just if my body wasn't responding, push it harder, you know, and so on.
Mm,
And it was kind of this anger fueled attempt at transforming myself. And here was this huge paradigm shift that if I was to love and care for myself, and if this desire to change was to come from a different place, um, that I would actually succeed. And I didn't believe it to be true until I proved it true.
right. Right. And do you find yourself now that you've lost 100 pounds, that you've now you're coaching people, and I want to talk a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah.
Like, do you find yourself ever feeling like here comes another curveball, I may like not be able to dodge this one, or do you now have enough skill set that you feel like you're pretty good at handling all this?
There's a bit of both. So I want to say that fat cells are the gift that keeps on giving. What I mean by that is once they're created, when we lose the weight, we can shrink and empty the fat cells, but they're always there waiting to be refilled. And that's why weight regain happens faster than the initial weight gain.
Ah.
So I share that because we want to understand what's happening biologically. And so I live with a certain biological reality that I also had to make peace with. And that is that I have a bunch of fat cells on my body that if they all got refilled, I'd be morbidly obese again. And I had to make
Mm,
peace with that. And that
mm,
in itself was a struggle to go, there's never a day coming in the future where I can eat like an undisciplined toddler. And our world offers us a lot of opportunities to eat like an undisciplined toddler.
yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
specifically say that because I'm referring to eating emotionally and eating in a very sort of juvenile way where we're eating purely for pleasure and escape and because it feels good. And as adults, we have or should have developed a level of emotional awareness where we recognize that these behavior patterns aren't helping us, And for me, I had to kind of pull my head out of this fantasy that somehow once I lost the weight, everything was going to magically be good. It's like, no, I am what I call slim, but it's SLWM, successful long-term weight manager. And
Great.
yeah,
I like
but
that. I like that.
and that's really what I teach in my program, Lifestyle 180. Is this is our goal is to become slim, but it's not skinny. It's successful long-term weight manager. So understand that for the rest of your life, your biological reality is such that you will have to manage your weight, because your biology means that your body will want to store fat again. It didn't lose that ability somehow just because you lost the weight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so mindfulness and awareness play a huge role. Um, Even something as simple as asking the question, what do I want this food to do for me?
That's a good question. And
Yeah.
you know what I like about that, about your 180 program as well, is that if you're teaching them that, you're trying to also let them know that there is not a magical place where you're going to go to when you lose all this weight, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that's what happens, right? You get disappointed, or you think, oh, I reached my goal, I'm good, let me go eat what I want now, right?
Yeah.
That happens a lot. That does happen a lot. I mean, I've had friends who have lost, 100 pounds or so, and I've gained 120 back, you
Yeah.
know so but I think that's a really great way to look at it, because it's reality, and then telling someone, okay, this is the reality, you are going to work on this for life.
Yeah.
This is not going to be until you get to this dress that you want to wear.
Yeah. And then having the, like, I don't treat it like it's a life sentence.
Right.
I could, but
Right.
it would feel like a life sentence if I didn't heal my relationship with food.
Right. Right.
So,
That's good. Hmm.
yeah, because food was my coping mechanism. Food was
Right.
my way of changing the channel in my head. It was my way of dealing with difficult emotions. And now that I have other tools to deal with it, one of them simply being acceptance. This
Hmm.
idea that like something is not wrong when I experience a difficult emotion. I like to say that emotions are like check engine lights. That little yellow light that comes on your dashboard, and it doesn't tell you exactly what's going on with your engine. It just says something needs your attention. Well, that's kind of what emotions are. Something needs your attention. But in the 21st century, what we do is kind of the equivalent of putting a piece of black electrical tape over that light so we can't see it. That didn't mean the problem went away. It just meant that we're using a very cheap way to sort of cover it up.
Wow, that's you got a lot of wisdom. You got a lot of like little nuggets you keep dropping on me over here. I love it.
Yeah.
So tell me about your program, your 180 program, your site, what you're doing to help people with this.
Yeah. So my goal is to help people lose the weight permanently. And that's a challenging task, and it's a tall order in a world
Yeah.
that sells quick fixes, fad diets, 90-day challenges,
Hmm.
21-day fixes, all this kind of stuff. What we need to do, if we want to transform our health, we actually have to transform ourselves. So it's important to understand that on the backside of this, you're not going to be the
Hold
same
on one
person.
second. One second. Something happened with my mic. One second.
No worries. You're still audible here.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Something happened with my mic. It turned off. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
Start with your
Yeah.
180.
Yeah. So with Lifestyle 180, it's about transforming your health. Now, in order to transform your health, you have to transform yourself.
Right.
So it's important to understand that this is not a temporary change in behavior that at the end of it, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm glad that's done. That's not how this works.
Right.
Because that's
Right.
how most diets work. I will get permanent results from a temporary effort. That's why they're attractive to us.
Right.
The idea, it's like believing in a Disney kingdom. You
Right.
know, it's never gonna be true. So if you want to create permanent change, you have to change permanently.
Mm,
And but it's again, some people are scared of that because yeah, but I don't want to give this up and this up and this up, and that's because of the role that these things play in your life. So the other part of it is, if I was just to dictate my rules to you, it's very disempowering. If I was to say you have to do this, 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 and this now for the rest of your life, oh my gosh, you're going to want to run away.
right. Right.
It's really important to me that when I work with somebody, I explain I'm not your Sherpa. In other words, I'm not carrying your backpack. I'm
Right.
your tour guide. And it's like I'm going to show you things about yourself and your journey that you never saw before, because I'm with you, looking at it from a slightly different perspective. But what we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer your healthy lifestyle, but you are going to have a key role in shaping it. So instead of me dictating rules to you, what we're going to do is we're going to take, say, a fundamental principle, because the basics of being healthy are not unknown. They're not some magical secret like
Right.
some Amazonian berry that was discovered. It, it's It's a lot simpler than that, right? But what it is how do we shape this to suit our own life and our own personal circumstances?
Mm.
So I look at it like it's two experts collaborating. So yes, I'm an expert in nutrition and psychology, and you're the expert of your own life experience.
Right, right.
And we need both expertises in order to successfully create this transformation. And if you have a hand in it, if you feel empowered, like you are shaping this, then you're much more likely to stick with it than if you're just following my rules.
Right. That's so good. That's so good because you're making them really be involved with the process. Because one of the, I think that when you're trying to lose weight, one of the hardest things is first of all admitting where you are, right? Your starting
Yeah.
point. And the second part is sometimes you do want somebody to just say ABCDE, right? Because
Yeah.
you're like, I don't even want to think about this, just ABCDE, please. But I love that because what you're saying is that you're working with them to make sure that this is not just an ABC process that you're putting them through for just a couple of weeks, but something that they're going to keep continuing for the rest of their life. So how long is your is the 180 program?
180 days.
Oh, is
And
it?
so,
Okay, that's why it's
yeah.
called that. Okay, I thought it meant like you're doing a 180.
It means
Got
both.
it.
So
Oh,
I
okay.
thought it was very, very clever.
It is clever. It's clever.
It's a 180-day program. That means it's also a 180-degree shift in terms of the life you're on. So if you continue on the path that you're currently on, you want to ask yourself where the end of that road is. And and that can be a really hard question, because let's say I've got someone that I was working with, and it's like, if you continue on the road that you're on, the end of that road is a heart attack, and it's a heart attack before you're 50.
Wow.
And that's a stark, uncomfortable realization.
Yeah.
And so then I want to sit with that person and go, I'm going to sit with you in this uncomfortable feeling. Like it's not, you don't want to leave people alone in like, I just dropped a bomb on your head, now bye.
Yeah.
Part of coaching is really creating human connection. And so in addition to like working with people to help them craft their lifestyle, I actually coach them through this transformation. And so that means that I create the space for people to be vulnerable and open, where I will never use their struggles as ammunition against them.
Right. That's awesome.
Now, because compassion is not a get out of jail free card, right? It's not, hey, you've already started on that cake, you might as well finish the whole thing. That's not compassion. That's enabling. And that's like saying to an alcoholic, well, you've already started that bottle, you might as well drink it now.
Right.
You wouldn't do that. So why do we do that with food?
Right.
But compassion is saying, in the process of trying to create change, it's not condoning it, it's not condemning it. It's saying, in the process of trying to create change, you're going to struggle. I'm going to be here with you in that, and I'm not going to judge you.
Right. Have you found let me see how I'm going to word this. Have you found people that you just realize we're not a good fit right now? Like they're just not ready for that 180-day journey?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's people that I'll meet because the thing is, I can't change people. It's funny.
Right.
There's like 6 steps to change, and there's like pre-contemplation, then contemplation, and so on. And you can go through the all. If you don't want to change, then let's acknowledge that the place that you're currently at, you want more where you're currently at than you want to change. And what we say is, we don't change until the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of change.
Right.
So change is inherently uncomfortable. Now, this is a challenge because our primal nervous system is wired to seek out comfort.
Right.
It's wired to avoid pain and discomfort. So we have that primal animal instinct in us. I don't want to be in pain and discomfort. Now we have a world that offers us unprecedented levels of comfort and convenience, where we can meet every need from our smartphone.
Right.
Without every, that's, from an energetic survival standpoint, that's incredible. We've done it. We've like exceeded it far beyond our wildest dreams. But the problem is, it means that we can just sit there and eat crap food that makes us feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another part of us, though. We're not just animals here. So we have a soul. We have something in us that makes us human, that makes us higher beings, if I can put it that way, depending on what your belief structure is. That part of us wants to grow. It wants to develop. It wants to better ourselves. We know within ourselves that we have the capability of doing and being better.
Right.
And so now we have this kind of tension between our nervous system that goes, this is uncomfortable, go back to your comfort zone, and I know I can do and be better. So interestingly, for example, for myself, one of the things I'm doing is every day I have a 10-minute cold shower. Now that's not
10
like
minutes. Oh, that's a long time.
And I turn it straight to cold, and I step in, take a deep breath, because I was in the Navy, I've done hypothermia training and whatnot. So I take a deep breath. So my first step into the shower, I'm breathing out. because the natural instinct when cold hits you is to go, so I actually breathe out. So now what it's doing is it's teaching me how to be comfortable with discomfort.
Hmm. That's good.
And you don't have to, you don't start with 10 minutes. I didn't start with 10 minutes, but after you get over the first, your brain screams at you like, what the heck are you doing?
Right.
You
Yeah,
realize
you're rewiring your brain. Right.
I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
there's man, maybe there's gurus out there that and maybe macho bros or something like that. I'm like, I'm none of those things.
Right.
This is simply me saying I want to be more resilient in the face of discomfort, and so I'm going to intentionally make myself uncomfortable,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in doing so, become more resilient. So I mean, I have a couple things that I do, and not, and I share this somewhat hesitantly because I'm like, not everybody's necessarily in the place where they want to do this. And I wouldn't have been in the place to do this a few years ago, given my own mental health back then. So I have a cold shower. I typically fast once a week for 24 hours. So that allows me to experience the discomfort of hunger and come to terms with this is not an emergency, and I'm not starving, and learn to cope with it. There'll be those that'll argue with that. They'll say that that's not intuitive eating and, you're suppressing, and so I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I used to be a binge eating food addict. So
Right.
so really, in one sense, it's me kind of just testing myself and seeing where am I at, where I'm at in terms of hunger. What's the response when I experience hunger now? Tolerable hunger is actually necessary if you want to lose weight. If you're never hungry,
Yeah.
you're never going to lose weight.
Right.
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 So tolerable hunger. I have a recumbent bike, and I get on that and I ride hard for 10 minutes. And so you say 10 minutes. Well, in those 10 minutes, my legs are burning and my brain is going, why are you doing this, you dummy? Like, my heart is beating fast. But again, it's about learning how to be present in discomfort and not feel like I have to take that discomfort away. And
That's
so
good. Yeah.
it's, ultimately I'm piecing together what I might call like my 30-day resilience challenge or something. So
No, that's good because I think one of the things is making yourself uncomfortable is a good practice. I think that's a good thing because life is going to throw you some pretty shitty hard balls,
yeah.
and sometimes even then you don't fall apart when that happens. Now you're used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it's like people would ask, well, why do you do this? And I go, okay, I'm 39 years old and I have a 6-month-old son. I'm going to be 40 and this kid's going to be 1. I'm going to be 50 and this kid's going to be 10 or 11. So this kid is a mover. Like, his legs never stop moving. He hasn't quite figured out crawling yet, and somehow he can cover a lot of distance
Right.
because he just won't give up. And I go, this is telling me what's coming down the pipeline here.
Right.
I got a kid who's going to run, and he's going to be a goer, and he's not going to stop moving. Like, he's not a snuggler. You hold him and his limbs don't stop moving.
Right.
If I don't work on my conditioning, if I don't work on, because I like lifting heavy things because I'm pretty strong. So that's me going into my comfort zone in one sense, right? I'm strong, I'll lift heavy things. But I actually need to improve my conditioning to be able to run after this kid and keep up with him. And I want to be able to keep up with him. That's the other part of it. I want to be present in his life. I don't want to be a sideline dad. I want to be active. I want to get on the floor with him. I want to wrestle with him, all this kind of stuff. And so that inspires me to be willing to be uncomfortable. And so I call it my emotionally compelling reason. Yeah. Let's say I'm going through Costco. I see this giant bag of Costco size bag of chips. And I go, man, I'd just love to smash that entire bag. Those things still come into my head. Yeah. Like, they're not they don't disappear for good, but I navigate them differently. I look at my son and I go, what do I want more? Do I want to eat the chips that are going to give me 10 minutes of pleasure? Or do I want to say no to those chips because I want to be the physically present, active dad in my son's life? Right. And I want that more because, parental love, I don't think there's any more powerful force in the world, really.
Right. I don't either. That's amazing that you've you really dropped so much knowledge, John. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know that you're busy, but I appreciate you. And so I would want you to do before I let you go, because my audience is listening and they're super great. They're always like supportive and asking questions and all that great stuff. So give us all of your social media handles where people can find you and read your story. Your website is amazing. I went on there and I was reading a lot of it. So it was really great. So why don't you go ahead and drop all that there for us?
Yeah, so freedomnutritioncoach.com. That's my website. My company is Freedom Nutrition Coaching. You can find me on Facebook. You can actually send me a friend request. I haven't hit my 5,000 friend limit yet. So my username is Canadian Nomad, but just one
Okay.
N, so Canadian OMAD. I have a podcast called Wellness Unplugged, and I call it Between the Before and After. So it's about these raw human conversations where we talk about the reality of trying to create change. So
Oh,
you
that's
can go to
great.
freedomnutrition.rocks/wellness unplugged.
Okay.
And I got a free guide for anybody who would like it. It's called Crush Your Cravings, and it'll show you the exact tools I use, my clients have used to lose, 50, 60, 70 pounds kind of thing. It's about a 20-page ebook. So you can go to freedomnutrition.rocks/crush your cravings.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's really, really great. I'm glad that you're doing that, John. I'm glad that you got through your trauma. I really am. I mean, that was very, to me, very inspiring because I know that, I've been through trauma myself. And, when you're going through trauma, you have choices. You can either,
Yeah.
really get through them or you can just stay in them. You really can mentally. You can stay in it, as you know, right? Fighting with mental wellness and, and all of that. So, thank you for doing this and thank you for what you have out there. I'm going to go on your site as well and check out your podcast. I didn't realize you had that on there. I'm going to go check that out. And I'll also look at your book as well. So thank you. You are
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank
I'm
you so
really
much for
glad we
having
had
me.
this time and congratulations on your little one.
Hey, thank you so
You're
much.
going
And
to
thank
need
you
a
for the
lot of
work that you do.
energy. Thank you. I have
Yeah.
3 boys, so I know what it is to run after boys. Holy Toledo fish.
Yeah. Well,
Whew,
thank you
it's
again.
tiring. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for being here. Make sure that you go on to Straight Talk, No Sugar Added, rate, review, and share. I also am going to make sure that John's information is all linked below into the show notes. So you can go there and follow him, go get his ebook, go listen to his podcast, and make sure you reach out to him if you're looking for a new way to think about weight loss and how to actually be a part of it. Not somebody who's going to just say, do this because I did this, but actually find your journey with you. So thank you guys for being here. This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Until next time.
This broadcast is brought to you by Wincheck Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.